Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia. Welcome back to a preview video for the upcoming Ajax and Diomedes DLC for Total War Troy. In today's preview, we'll be looking at all the new units that's going to be arriving for the DLC. This video will have two parts. In this first section, we'll look at Ajax's new units. There are a total of 9 new units for his faction that are unique to his faction. And then we'll introduce Diomedes Units, which has 9 more new units. Now we have 18 units here on display actually. We have both the level 1 version and the max rank version, just to compare the stats a little bit to see how they grow. Now we have a very bored Ajax over here, so let's get things started with the first unit here. This is the Island Spearman. Now the island type of unit is not new to the game. We have islanders and also island clubmen from previous factions, but now we have the Island Spearmen being added into the game through Ajax's faction. And these are your typical spear infantry units that specialize in anti-range as well as anti-charge, as they have expert charge defense, which will help them negate any charge bonus from any attacker when braced. So they have to basically just be stationary, defensive, facing the enemy. You negate all the enemy charge. The other one, Hide in Forest, is pretty basic. It's pretty much on all units, and because they use spears, they have bonus against large, bonus against swordsmen, as well as bonus against axemen. That follows the same rule as Troy, so nothing crazy there. As you can see, they are pure defensive units, almost no charge bonus. Damage is also on the low side. Melee defense is their evasion, that's kind of their selling point. Melee attack is really low, this is your hit accuracy. Speed is alright at 37, it's not very high in Troy. You can easily get to the 40s as infantry. And that's because they have decent armor and a pretty good shield that blocks 60% of all missile fire. 8,100 health is pretty average. Morale is pretty good. There are bonuses, the base value is only 55. So they are your medium-sized or weight class frontline units. Poor attack is definitely their weakness, and expert charge defense, being able to negate enemy charge, is their strength. Then, looking at their upgraded counterparts, these are fully ranked up. You're going to see a trend here, so we're just going to use this as a point of study. You see that morale goes up by 10 points, melee attack goes up by 5, melee defense goes up by a whopping 13, but no other stat changes. Your damage does not increase as you rank up, but your hit chance and your evasion will go up, and morale always goes up. So max rank has that advantage over the base unit. Then moving on to a slightly more specialized unit, we have the Salamis Marines. So being on the island Salamis, some of the units for Ajax will have this title, as these are the islanders. This is actually named after your starting island. And you can see these guys are your typical sword and shield infantry with decent armor, 50, even more than the Island Spearmen. You have a shield that's a slightly smaller size, so only 55% range block chance. Morale is very healthy at a base value of 60. Speed still 37, a good reflection of their armor and the fact that they're medium weight class. If they're light, they move much faster. Melee attack is where things shine here, 42, so pretty good hit chance, and then 35 evasion's not terrible. 125 damage is obviously great. 12 points of charge bonus. Ammo for some javelin that they carry, so they will throw these out as they charge into the enemy. Only 2 ammo, that's why you don't have a lot of them. Range is 95 and you have 15 damage. It's not super high, and they have what's called Reckless Charge. It's an active ability they can activate to increase their charge bonus and speed at the cost of melee defense. So they pretty much strip themselves of most of their melee defense just to increase their charge bonus and their speed for 45 seconds. It's really good to use before you launch yourself into the enemy. And aside from that, they have Flank Attack Improved, which makes sense because this is your sword or offensive unit that you want to use. Their strength obviously would be their high armor and high morale. And if you see their upgraded version, you're going to see the trend where you get 10 points of morale, 8 points of melee attack, 12 points of melee defense this time, and 2 points of extra missile damage. So range damage actually increases with rank up, whereas melee damage does not. So that's the build there. Then we have Salamis Swordmen. So obviously compared to the Salamis Marines, the Swordmen's even going to be more specialized in attack, and they are heavily armored. They are a heavyweight class unit, excellent armor, excellent at flanking, and they also have expert charge defense. So you're going to see down here, they have flanking attack improve. It says here they have expert charge defense. It means they can negate, but you don't see the symbol down here. So I don't know actually which one to believe, because usually you need to have a symbol down here to have that trait. But in their description, it does say they can negate enemy charge, which is what we saw with the Spearmen earlier. They have outstanding damage, very good melee defense, very good melee attack, and very high armor, 95. The shield is also excellent, 65%, the best shield we have seen so far. Morale is excellent, and speed is much lower because you're now a heavy unit. Charge bonus still at 15, you can't expect too much from melee units for having high charge bonus. And your health is very healthy at 9,180. And if you upgrade them, this is the last time we're going to show this because it's going to be very similar. 10 points of morale, 8 points of melee attack, 15 points of defense. So the defensive value have been shifting each time, but overall it's a larger increase in defense than melee attack. So units have better survivability as you level up, but not necessarily stronger attack. Then continue the theme of Salamis and the Islanders, we have the Salamis Spearmen. Now we have a heavy defensive unit, giant shield, and less armor than the Swordmen actually, 85 compared to the 90. The shield obviously is better, so instead of 65% you have 75% range block chance. Morale is still very, very healthy, still the slow speed. The melee attack and melee defense is very healthy, damage is very healthy, so compared to the Island Spearmen, these are very good offensively speaking, and they have what's called the dual weapon usage. So that's in the description here, but we don't see the icon or the active ability. So I think this is something that will be implemented into the final copy because I'm still on the very pre-release version of the game. So I'm gonna trust the panel here, and what you can do with switch weapon type is they will drop the shield, put it on their back.
Under attack.
We're getting attacked by the enemy general, don't worry. Let's send Ajax out there so we don't have to worry about this dialogue while we talk about units. It's on slow, but it's nice. So here we have the Spearmen. They should be able to change weapons in the final build of the game. That way they put the shield on their back and they will increase even more attack by holding the spear in two hands. And they become much better aggressive offensive units, and that's the difference they have against the Island Spearmen. Of course, being a heavy class, tier 3 unit, they definitely need to stand out. Obviously, they will still be your go-to offensive option, but they're not bad as a hybrid, being able to lower their shield. Then moving on, we have many more interesting units for Ajax's faction, including 2 units that are named after him. Ajax's Wall and Ajax's Companion. So let's zoom into these. First thing you notice is these units have smaller unit sizes, only 45, because they are units of great stature, basically semi-giants, similar to Ajax himself. So they have much more health, because you can see the total health is way higher, but the number of units is much lower, so per unit health is actually really, really high. They get Reckless Charge, like the unit we've seen before, where they can sacrifice some of their defensive stats to be able to increase their speed and charge bonus. We're getting shot by the enemy archer unit, so therefore the beautiful shields are coming out, and that's a cool thing because they have 85% range block chance for having such a giant shield. These guys are your defensive juggernauts in your army. They have the highest health, they have or they're getting killed by morale because the enemy general are shooting at them. Slow motion death. They have good range resistance unless it's the enemy general shooting at you. Extremely high armor, and they have very good base morale at 70. Speed is actually decently high for being a heavy unit, 35 compared to the 28 we seen earlier with the Salamis units, and they have decent melee attack and melee defense, even though that's not where they thrive on. They're really your defensive go-to unit. Damage is okay, I would say it's average or slightly below average. You have decent charge bonus, and most of all, if they don't get killed, you can see we already lost 4 units to the enemy hero, but if you don't get killed, you just get injured, what you can do by being outside of combat, you can replenish your hit point over time. unfortunately that guy is not going to heal up from 0. So if we're not taking that much casualties, we can definitely heal back up to full. Aside from that, you also have expert charge defense and siege attacker, meaning they are like giants in that you don't need to waste time sieging. You can simply launch your attack against the enemy gate. This will happen when your shield is not up. Anyhow, if you upgrade them to the highest tier, you will not get more health. You simply have more health because that unit's healthy, this unit's not. You will get 10 points of morale, the 26 because they have dropped quite a bit of morale, and you'll get the additional melee attack and melee defense. That part is typical. Then we can talk about another unit, Ajax's Companion. So whereas the Wall is a pure defensive copy of Ajax's unit, Ajax's Companion is an offensive unit. So they are still a heavy spearman with shield. That part's the same. They have siege attack, they have great stature, small unit, decent amount of health, but nothing compared to these guys, right? 11,000 versus 8,775. And once again, we're showcasing this on large unit sides. So if you're playing on extreme, scale up. If you're playing on smaller ones, scale down. The large is the default option, so it's easy to scale both ways, which is why we're showcasing it on it. You can see these units have very similar stats to those, except for it has way less armor. So 105 versus 70. Morale is similar, slightly lower. I mean, but if you increase it by 10, it's actually the same. It's hard to compare to these guys right now because they're getting murdered. But at the same time, 35 speed for a heavy unit, not bad. Mainly has to do with their long legs, I'm guessing. 44 melee attack, which is much better than these guys over here. I think they have only 32, but slightly less melee defense, higher damage, higher charge. They also carry a few javelins that they can dish out damage before they dive into combat. And most of all, they specialize in flanking attack improve while retaining all the defensive bonus of Ajax's Wall. So I think these are actually going to be better utility units. Maybe you want 1 or 2 Ajax's Wall just to hold down a certain point with their morale, armor, and shield. They can definitely survive a long time. But if you want to deal some damage, Ajax's Companion is probably the way to go. So that's the main difference between these two units. And as you can see so far, you have a lot of strong frontline units for Ajax, which is a great complement to his next 3 units, which are the range units. Starting with the most basic one, the Lokian Slingers. Lokian will obviously be a location name. It's off the coast of Salamis to the north of Attica. That's a region nearby where they start. And you have slingers from that area with very long range, decent missile damage, not super high. Slingers suffer from slightly lower damage, very healthy amount of ammo at 30. The melee stats really not something we need to talk about because it's hard to get through 30 ammo, and it's much more efficient to have these guys use their range than their melee because their damage is really bad and their defense is really bad. So you don't want these guys in harm's way. And in terms of speed, they're actually quite slow at 28, so they will get caught. It's hard to kite with these guys, but you got a healthy amount of morale, and they carry a little shield on their arm, which gives them 35% range block chance. But what's most outstanding about these 3 unique range units belonging to Ajax is they have something called Expert Accuracy, which is new to the game. And this unit, because they are Expert Accuracy, they will never deal friendly fire damage. So if you have your frontline sturdy guys in the front engage with the enemy unit, and you have your range unit fire, oftentimes you'll be hitting the back of your shielded units and you kill them because they don't have the shield on their back, so no range block chance and they get killed. Well, for Ajax's faction, that's never going to be a problem. You can safely put your range unit in the back, you don't even need to flank with them, and just have them continuously fire into the mess of the melee line, and you will never hurt your own unit. So that is quite powerful, and something I look forward to doing in a future campaign. So vote for Ajax. And if you see the upgraded version, much like what we saw with the javelins of those swordsmen, when you upgrade these in terms of rank, you see that the missile damage will increase. Now, I have actually a theory on why this is the case versus melee weapon damage, and that's because what you see here in terms of damage is a calculated value based on, you see the base damage, armor piercing damage, reload time, firing rate. All those stats are compiled together. So the reason why the number jumps is because the compiled components, the actual damage, as in if we hover over this higher tier unit and look at the damage, still 19 and 7, but the reload time has become much shorter, and the firing rate, even though it's not being shown, I think it's also jumped higher. So technically you're seeing the increase in a calculated number because the damage component never increased, but you're shooting faster, so your DPS is going up. Whereas the melee component is calculated differently or displayed differently in Troy. You're seeing your hit rate, you're seeing evasion, and then you're seeing just the raw damage. Now, of course, this has an attack interval, but if you want to know your actual DPS, you need to consider your melee attack as well as the enemy's melee defense. So it's not a compiled number like you see with missile damage. So that's why I think when you upgrade, you don't see any changes in melee damage, but you do see that in missile damage. So that's just something I noticed. Then you have their veteran cousins, much more decked out in armor, but in reality only 5 more points. You do get a bit more health though. You can see that you are gaining about 680 health, you're gaining 5 points of armor, you're gaining speed even though you're wearing extra armor, so that's pretty cool. You're gaining some melee defense. Yeah, I'm pointing the other way, so all the negative numbers are actually positive numbers. A little bit of extra ammo, you lose some range, which actually hurts, I think. You lose 10 points of range, 13 missile damage, so that's impressive. That increase in damage is very important. Then lastly, the last unit here is also a small size range unit. And this unit's named after Ajax's half-brother, Telsur, who is a famous archer, who is a partner in crime with Ajax's shield. So that's why we have such good complementary shield versus range unit who never shoot the shield while they're in combat. Kind of has to do with Ajax protecting his half-brother with his giant shield as he deals damage to the enemy. So Telsur's bowmen here are a medium archer unit. They have decent range for archers. Archers are famous for having about 160 range and being outranged by slingers. In this case, 180 is pretty close to the 190 that we saw on the basic slingers and the 180 on the veteran, so it kind of matches that. You have higher damage on archers, so that's their key selling point. Same ammo as the veteran, 2 extra ammo compared to the slingers. You have still pitiful stats for your melee. It's slightly better than the slingers, but it's really not that much better. Avoid getting into melee if you can, and just use these guys with their expert accuracy to help out your front line. Now, if you do get into melee, even though their attack is really bad, their defense and armor is decent enough for them to survive, in my opinion. All the stat line is pretty close to exactly what you see with the veteran slingers. You can see that you actually have more morale, more armor, more melee defense, more charge bonus, and more missile damage. So you're obviously an improved version, and it's quite nice. So at the end of the day, this is your top tier range units for Ajax's faction, and they will work very well with both Ajax's wall and Ajax's companion, just like how Ajax and Telsur, who is a general in the game, can work very well as companion armies on the map, as Telsur's motivations all link to battling with Ajax. So this is going to wrap it up for Ajax's new unit to the game, and next we're going to look at Diomedes units to the game. So see you guys there. Alrighty, as we hop back in with Diomedes showcase, we're no longer going to do the rank up for the units because it's going to be the same thing. We already see it, 10 points of morale, about 8 points of melee attack, 15 points of melee defense, and if you have a range component, your range component will go up when you rank up, but your melee weapon damage will not. Now, Diomedes features a lot of infantry. He specializes in charging out at the enemy, being fast and nimble, and not only that, his unit have Vanguard deployment. Now, we're not showcasing that on this map, but quite a few of them have that. So let's start with the most basic one here, the Argive Swordsmen. So hailing from Argos, these are location-based names, and you have this medium class unit who is dressed kind of light here, but they have poor attack for a sword unit, which is surprising. They are shielded, and their selling point is that they have 42 speed. So they're a very, very nimble unit. And even though you might think about the poor attack, you can see that little green bar here on both the melee attack and the damage. And that's because all of Diomedes unit have something called ferocity, or at least his melee ones. And this increases your weapon damage and melee attack by 20% if you're above 50% health. So once you lose 50% of your units, then you will lose this bonus. So you kind of have these understated units in order to take advantage of this. So if they give the base stat too high, then you're getting too much of a boost. So that's why most of Diomedes units start out with slightly lower stats, and they're boosted by ferocity, and if you lose about half of them in battle, or if the battle goes really long, you might be in a disadvantage beyond that point. Aside from that, this unit will have Vanguard deployment, so they're great flanking into the enemy range units. You're fast, you can catch them. You do have a small shield, 40%, really not much to talk about. Very low armor. You're basically not even generating a lot of charge bonus, so you're not expected to kill the unit you're charging into, but just to disrupt them, just to chase them away. You do carry 2 little javelins that you can throw out at 110 range, which is pretty decent. Damage is a little bit low, but you can't expect too much out of these guys. Then continuing on, we have another Argave unit, the Raiders. So these guys will have better damage, 110 in this case, as you can see. They also have Vanguard deployment, they also have good charge, they also have ferocity. So most of the damage here is boosted by that little green bit to be 110 because they have ferocity. They have very good melee attack, much poorer melee defense. These are your light unit with 48 speed, so even faster. So another unit that is quite useful for disrupting enemy back lines, killing off their range. Very low armor, no shield even this time, so you're just going to have to close that gap on foot. You do deal much more charge bonus, so they are going to deal a bit more damage compared to what we just saw with the Argave Swordsman. Then we have a slightly upgraded version of these guys, the Night Runners. So now we're getting really into running. Once again, you have Vanguard deployment, you have stock on top of that. So these guys, given that they are Night Runners, will be hidden on the map until they get really close to the enemy on all terrains. They look pretty amazing with their black shield and their crest. You have good morale on these units, very low armor, very lightly dressed unit, very fast, 55. So it's really about outmaneuvering your enemy with your units. They deal very high damage. The melee attack and melee defense is not super good. It's buffered by this ferocity, so you got to really think about this number. It's really not that high, and could use some extra boost if you can get it from your faction leader or your general, just to give yourself some extra stats. Other than that, once they get in there, this unit can actually help you destroy enemy range, or maybe just to flank enemy units to deal damage from behind. Their shield will block 40% range, but you probably don't want to use any of these units as your frontline unit. Then moving on to something slightly more sturdy with the Argave Axemen. So this is your medium class infantry unit. They have 45 armor, which is quite low if you think about all the units we have seen so far. They have a shield that will block about 65%, so that's a decent shield at least. Their melee attack is buffered again, so good attack, but low damage, even with the boost on ferocity. They have flank defense improved, so they're actually good at being, defensive units who can withstand some flanking from behind. They have strong vigor, which means they're less affected by fatigue. Think of this as fatigue resistant. 42 speed is decent. This is pretty fast for a medium unit if you think about it. That's going to be the theme, being able to outmaneuver the enemy, being fast on the battlefield, but not very hard hitting. Then we have the same type of unit as we saw earlier with the Argave's Raiders. Now we have Heroic Axe Runners. So you still have super fast speed, 48, good morale, almost no armor, decent attack, very good melee attack, so very good hit rate for these units, very good charge bonus, still ferocity, flank attack improve, fits the theme, Vanguard deployment. This is the unit you want to charge into the enemy front line from the rear instead of harassing with these. So these units tend to focus on harassing the enemy range. This would be what you throw at the enemy melee from behind. This unit here was the one that does not have Vanguard deployment. It comes back right here. So we have Vanguard, 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 Vanguard. Those are the only 4. This Axeman and then this Swordman that we're gonna see real quick. The Wait, this is another Axeman. Right, Renowned Axeman. The Swordman's right here. Argave Swordmaster. Let's continue in order that I have them here. So Renowned Axeman. So this is your heavy unit. Finally a unit with excellent armor, 85, good health, and they have good damage. 128 with advantages to armor piercing. We have mainly armor piercing damage, that's what they mean by that. You have bonus against swordsmen, bonus against spearmen. You do not have that against large because you are using an axe, not a spear. But overall, they counter spear, which is one of the few units that actually do, even though some spear unit also have good against axe, so it'd be a kind of bonus damage on both sides. 128 is not super high, but once again, it's not low. You do enjoy really high melee attack, that kind of is the theme. Finally, we have a unit that's not nimble and fast. This is your heavy version, so this would be more or less your frontline unit to deal with enemy infantry. Also 75% range block chance on the shield. Very good. Then we have the Argave Swordmaster. So back on theme, our Argave theme of being fast. Medium class unit with decent armor. They do have a shield, but it's only 55%. As you can see, it's kind of a crescent moon shield. You have your high melee attack. That's going to be the theme for all of Diomedes units. Decent melee defense, good damage on these guys. Very similar to what we saw with the Night Runners. They kind of look like that with their clothing option as well. They carry some javelin that can deal damage up close. They have ferocity like all the other melee units. Improved flanking defense as well as improved flanking attack. So they're quite versatile. Given that they have slightly decent armor, not very high but not low, and then you have your good morale, your speed and all that. They also can shoot while moving, which makes sense given that they have javelins. You got to get rid of them as you charge up, so nothing too crazy there. This would be once again another damage dealer that you have. Flexible units with their speed, you can use them as frontline or use them to charge enemy from the rear. Then we have very few range units. We have the Argave Slingers. These are your light slingers, 170 range, pretty standard for your slingers, even though they're about to fire at the enemy general or they're probably going to get shot back. You can see them in action here, not bad. They have low damage. This would be your typical slinger damage. Compared to what we saw with Ajax, they have both less range and less damage. So not impressed, and also less ammo, because we were looking at about 30, 190, and about 50. So it's a big drop. They once again have good melee attack because even they have ferocity. Seems like Diomedes just gives the whole faction ferocity. And low armor, you don't want these guys on the front line. Melee defense is not very, very high. Then we have upgraded version. We have these who are busy firing. The armored Argave Slinger, which I question. How do you tell they're armored? They look exactly the same as the slinger. So this is a slinger, this is an armor slinger. Armor slinger. Same model. Like, maybe their helmet has a point now instead of like a little circle. Like it's now like a little spearhead, I think. That's the only bit of extra armor. Even the shield looks less impressive. Like this is like a bronze shield. I guess there's a wood type too. But this is wood. Like it's the same model. Like how is this armored? That's one thing. But stat-wise, it did increase. 15 points of armor increase, 5 points of morale increase. You lost the speed because you increased the armor. You have much more health. You have slightly higher melee attack, slightly higher melee defense, slightly higher charge. The ammo doesn't count because they're using them. They both have low ammo in my opinion. The range goes up this time as you became more experienced, or actually in this case became armored, which is the opposite of what happened to the slingers for Ajax unit. Because once those guys became veterans, they couldn't throw it as far. Maybe because they got old? But damage is low. Like this armored version matches up with the regular version for Ajax's unit, 52. So not impressed there well. And you can see, because ferocity is spread along all the unit, if you're playing as Diomedes, you need to focus on, these very nimble runners or your swordsmen, or even maybe some of, chariots or other just standard units that's shared among all the factions. Maybe some of those special cavalry units you can get from Centaur, that would work very well, giving you good charge, good speed, outmaneuver, and then those can help you deal damage with the increased weapon damage and melee attack for those to help boost them. So that's kind of the preview we have here as we see these units fire off slowly into the distance. So hopefully you guys enjoy this overview of all the new units, and come back next time. We'll be covering some of the new gods that are added into the game, their special mechanic, as well as what special unit or perhaps special agent that they can recruit and what they can do. So see you guys then. Bye!